Meditation. It's odd how many different forms it comes, how many different opinions of the way you can do it. And you know me, I just go back to the same rules. I go back to my God laws, and if it stands against the laws, then I know which one is best for me. So I appreciate that there are so many. It's just odd that no one seems to want to agree that meditation is nothing but controlled thinking. 22 million thoughts per second, that's a lot. And the human mind or the consciousness that we are aware of can only expand upon 10% of it. And it's very hard to focus that 10% on one area and think about that one area of that big 22 million thoughts per second. Freeze frame, 22 million different thoughts. Next second, 22 million different thoughts. The brain is phenomenal. So what has come about after evolution, it doesn't really matter. When we come to this point now that we are with the brains that we have a consciousness, and our consciousness is able to look at the thoughts that we have. I think, therefore I am is a recognition of the thinker. Those that do, and they're just doing out of instinct. It's a couple different ways to look at them, but they're not aware of self. They're presently not thinking about themselves in the moment that they are in. So that also means that the things around them have neither a past or a future, because we only refer to past and future from where we are relevant to it. So they are literally within the moment in its entirety. That's why ignorance is bliss. I think, therefore I am is the moment was the moment the creator no longer just moved. The creator decided to go in a direction. And once that moment occurred, the creator had to become aware of self. And in order for the creator to evaluate self, the creator had to know what self was not. You know, I really wish I can get the Adala's name off the top of my head, but a spiritual motivator of mine that I like to refer to, he said, you don't go inside to find self, because when you go inside, you're just going to find the compilation of what you have become up to this point within your existence. Self was there before that. So if you want to find self, put aside all the things that you are not, and what shall remain is self. But what you'll find at that moment is that your past and your future don't exist. At that moment, you lose yourself. And it's not that you lose yourself lost. It's the moment your brain no longer is acknowledged as the self we acknowledge ourselves as. So meditation, in all of its many different forms, all of them always bring you back to a point of the mirror, where you get to look at the reflection of self. And one thing that I really stress to my kids a lot is like I like to think about the natural created and man-made. And I always do that because when it's natural created, it's perfection in its design. There's a specific reason there for your soul's journey, for everyone's soul's journey to come upon and be blessed with. And when I think man-made, I always think there's something fucked. There's something that you got to consider later on. You have to consider the future. You have to consider the past before it. And you have to consider who created it, because the future and the past of its perspective is based on the person that created it, just like all things. So when you're referring to the mirror reference, God didn't create mirrors. He inspired them through reflection. But reflection was always distorted. Every single time you look in nature and you try to see it exactly as it is, there's always a micro distortion. Always going to be that. And every time you try to do godly things, like show somebody who they are, you're always going to get an adverse, because mirrors are not who you are. Even what you're looking at is a optical illusion. Read the word that you're looking at. Read this. So I always think about that when I go back to looking into the mirror, and I got to remember that God said, reflect upon self. Because the things that you have become to this point is your accumulated. The accumulated body you have, the accumulated thoughts that you gather, the accumulated history, the accumulated spiritual energy, your accumulated everything. And those are reflections of the you that you can't see, the you that is absent when you're in the moment, the you that is freed, not lost. When your brain is finally ready to accept that it's not the thing going on, something else is in charge. When the brain realizes that it's not actually steering the steering wheel, when the brain realizes that it's only been sitting there enjoying the ride the whole time, and it hasn't been doing anything, that's when self gets to really indulge in this experience of life. So meditation, regardless of which one you do, however you go about it, make sure that it brings you to that point. And then don't let your very, very, very clever brain convince you that it can show you something past that point. Because remember, your brain's going to give you whatever scenario you need to believe whatever the fuck it wants you to believe, so as long as it stays in charge. Because your brain, as it's supposed to be, is for survival. Your brain is active, 22 million thoughts per second. What you want to talk about? You just want to talk about this little 10% here. And 10%, remember, 10% is only for those who actually use their consciousness. Some people, they can do with less, and some people, they're striving for more. But the average person is only consciously aware of 10% of the thoughts that they're having at any particular moment. That's what that mythology is. And it's also from a very, very small data pool. It's not even, well, I'm not even gonna go into the 10% thing. But when I look further into it and I realize what the publishers of the particular science journal that inspired the entire 10% thing, because like I said, you gotta look at the person that put the creation out there, future and past. And when I come to realize what they was trying to do was trying to tell you that you can inspire. You're not physically capable of knowing 100% of all the thoughts your brain is having at any particular moment, because that's 22 million thoughts. 90% of this planet freaked the fuck out after they got 4 things to deal with at one moment. That's just that. The last 10%, the upper echelon of people, people that take stress, they have broken down a secret that most of y'all will never get. And what they do is they take that 4 problems and they deal with 1. Well, first they look at all 4, and then they look at what their expertise is, what they can do immediately, what inspiration comes immediately to one of those problems that they can apply with very little outside resource or effort towards, or the minimal. And then they look at also the one that they'll be minuscule at, the one that is their weakest point, where they are not the most prescribed to deal with that situation, and they hire out. They get someone who is capable of doing that in a timely fashion. But then after that, they go and they look at the remaining and they categorize and they prioritize. Now they have the 4 still, but whatever category they're in. And then they deal with the 1. Usually the first one's going to be whoever they had to hire for whatever. So they're going to deal with them too. And then the last 2, they know they can knock this one out and they're going to need this person. So they're going to focus on getting that person to knock out that one. And after they get that person to knock out that one, then they're going to focus in on their problem. The one that they know they can do best on their own. But they're not trying to look at more of what their brain is doing. They're looking at less. And meditation helps them get there. And like I said, meditation comes in many forms. I've been practicing a tradition of 24-hour meditation. And I've been doing that since I was probably about 10. And I started by accident. I called it by what it is because I misinterpreted what the person that was attempting to teach me what meditation was actually saying to me. And I'm glad I did misinterpret it, because it allowed me to create my own interpretation of it, that I can go on my own belief pattern to put the proper testing and formalization to it of how to conduct it and see if it actually was beneficial. But nevertheless, I went through another phase after that where I considered it prayer, because meditation and prayer was the same thing. When I was naive to my own understanding of mind, body, and soul, as most people are, we become susceptible to religious prowess and religious propaganda, because it fills in those blanks with methodical, high, out of my hands, no responsibility here, thoughts and beliefs. But nevertheless, so once again, somebody was trying to teach me how to pray. I misinterpreted what they meant by the form of prayer that they was trying to teach me. And I took it the wrong way. I completely related it to the same interpretation of meditation that I had took on the first time. So I just took a couple matured modifications to it. And I understood why in my immature thoughts I was doing this kind of like that way, and I should have kind of been like this way. So I did that. And then after I had become awoken, before my pineal opened, but just after my prefrontal cortex finally hardened, I understood beyond religious control. I understood at that moment, honestly, beyond religious control, political control, any outside entities. I understood that control in its own was no longer anybody's ability. Power doesn't exist. It's all been an illusion. And meditation has helped me bring it all to that, because sometimes throughout my day, when I'm talking to anybody, like I said, like I've always said, we never talk to anybody else. We only talk to ourselves out loud. And people respond, and then we respond to that. But as I talk to myself amongst my own thoughts, that in its own is meditation. So I make sure that I am praying through that process of thinking. But what I've actually been doing is I've been just controlling my brain. My brain has not had the ability or had the time or had the ignorance of me consciousness to pull its I'm afraid tricks, I'm scared tricks, survivability tricks, risk factor tricks. And I don't know if you've seen a few videos ago, I was speaking about risk factor and how that was my fear factor that crept in on me, and why it was able to linger upon me for so many years. And I not only accepted it, I saw it as You know what I mean? It went through all the same traits as anybody with any phobia. And then you would come to an expert within the field and they would say that this is clinically practical. This is a condition that is placed upon this person. So risk was the same thing. And most people will say, yeah, the greatest thinkers, they always go with risk factor. And then I had to stop to think when somebody had actually complimented me one time on my level of risk analyzation at such a rapid pace. I stopped and I was like, first off, the conversation was about decision making. I come to decisions quickly and I take long to come away from that. I am open to whatever you want to say. Now, don't mind me if I'm going to bat back with you, but if your decision is going to be what I end up taking, then you better believe your shit better stand, because mine's is. And if yours can't knock mine's down, and I'm not talking about fighting, but I'm talking about it has to rank up. It has to go, oh, okay, I understand that. I'm glad that I see that perspective now, because when I made this decision, that was not the perspective I had. And that's why this decision was so strong. But I'm going to change over to this one. And it's probably going to take you it's going to take you way longer than it took me to come to that decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to come to that decision as soon as possible without you. But nevertheless, so when I'm looking at, you know what? I digress. Because my whole point was when you meditate, make sure that you practice calming your brain down. Coming to a nothing is the goal. This is one of the things in life where literally nothing, having nothing, stripping yourself of nothing. You heard people say, get rid of all the earthly material things. Material was the factor there. Earthly was only because the people at the time only knew of the planet. And here comes one of my loves. And if you are, don't come past that. If you not. Don't come past that.
Come past what?
That right there. So if you are, at that time you only knew about earth, they said earthly material. Material was the key. It's the atomized things, the material of the universe, anything that has come into a compilation. As it wasn't what it was when it began, it is now what it has become. Strip yourself of that mentally. Then your brain in itself realizes, because the last thing it's going to even consider is, I was not here when this was here. Like, even your brain doesn't even start developing. You got pictures. Most of y'all who got them sonogram pictures, that is a picture of you as a being without a brain. So your brain can't be you. You wasn't even consciously able to think until you was 2, 3. Some of y'all maybe 1.5. Like, we have some memories, but that's because while that tissue and those neurons was being first developed, well, they went to work right away. So literally, the first memories you have of those things. I remember a window in the hospital. Now, mind you, I was in the hospital for the first 3 years of my life, but I remember a specific vision. And I know now it's because the way I laid in my bed every night, I saw this and it imprinted in my brain. You know what I mean? I remember my grandmother's workstation downstairs in the sterilizing room, because she brought me down there every single day for like a year. So I sat in the exact same place. I had to have been an infant, because I was obviously the exact same perspective. So I was sitting in some chair or something, probably a car seat, you know, black folks do, car seat or a sitting chair, a little bouncer, so that she can see me work. Watch me while I work, and I can watch her. And she knew where her grandbaby was, since I had to be in this hospital on this IV thing. So I remember those. Wasn't conscious. Wasn't no movement going on in my memory. But our brain is going to realize once you strip it of everything and you go back to the void, I'm not me. This being that is this life is something that is older than me, even by a few months or a few days, few centuries, few lives. But I'm not me. And when I die, this is where maturity comes in, because in the beginning, when you're young, it just feels immortal. It's like where the brain is like, well, if it's not me, then we ain't never gonna die. Something was here, like we gonna go forever. But then when you maturity kick in and you start understanding the relevance of time, the third dimension, and the brain starts filtering in that understanding as information through the other dimensions are filtering through the brain, then the brain is going to go, that thing that is the life I am is exactly the same as it was. Nothing changed. Not one bit of it. Increase, decrease, left, right, shock, flicker, nothing. But I have. Brain that went like this constantly. And then it's going to come to a point of mortality. And the thing that is this life that I've been claiming to be my life, that I just want to experience, I just want to have fun, it's going to keep going. Zero change. But I'll go back to what I was before I was anything. So the brain is going to fight that. It's going to struggle against that. Meditation helps you. I just realized this, but to come to that point of total blackness within self, that's giving the brain the ability to understand what consciousness will be, what consciousness was before, and what it will be after. It will exist. It will be there. We're just not able to see the experience, and the brain can't comprehend it because it is more part of this third dimension than the other two aspects of us. Our consciousness can flow anywhere. Our spirit literally is everywhere. So the body is the only thing that has all the limitations on the front end and the back end. So meditation allows soul to embrace body and hold it like a cradle, and for mind to understand so that it can experience peace. They try to say all these things in like Bibles and things like that. And I just don't like when people use certain points to just get their point across. I ain't have no point to get across. All I was really saying was that meditation in any form is important, but just make sure that it gets you to the goal of the meditation. And that's